watching Parker Success Academy with Dr. William E. Morgan.
Hello, I'm Dr. William E. Morgan, and this is Parker Success Academy, where we explore models of business success in practice. Today, I have a very special guest, Dr. Richard Harris. Dr. Harris, welcome to Parker Success Academy.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Morgan, for having me.
Now, typically we have chiropractors come and talk about their practices, but you're a medical doctor, a physician. But your model practice was so interesting, I really wanted to hear how you run this. Now, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your practice?
Sure. So I'm a pharmacist and internal medicine physician in Houston, Texas. And I worked in a conventional system, hated it, absolutely hated it. Felt like I wasn't making an impact and decided to leave on my own. And so I self-taught functional medicine. I read every single study I could find about nutrition, lifestyle, meditation, all of these things, and decided to open up my own practice. Well, in November of last year, I realized that, you know what, I can do all this stuff online and I can pass those cost savings on to my clients, and it frees me up to do other things like my podcast and some of the other things I'm doing. And so that's what I do. And so now my structure is a little bit different. I have a introduction period with a wellness class that they go through 5 or 6 hours of pre-made courses. And then what I do with people is after they view the class, I say, okay, what's your plan? And then we create a plan together for them to have sustained wellness. And I back that up with some of our well-known functional medicine testing, microbiome, oxidative stress, metabolites, hormones, and all of that.
Well, after hearing some of your podcasts, getting to know you, and hearing you lecture at Parker seminars, I realized that you're really a chiropractor at heart, and that your goal is to remove the barrier to good health so the body can heal itself, which is kind of the premise of chiropractic, no matter where we stand. But so I'm really excited to hear about how you practice and the things that you do that have made you successful, and how your journey has transpired from being a pharmacist to a physician, to an internal physician, to realizing that you've got more to offer. So can you tell us something interesting about yourself, something fun that people might not know?
Sure. So usually when people ask me this question, I tell them two things. Number one, I have 2 doctorates and a master's with no bachelor's. So I kind of skipped that whole process. And the second thing is I did a commercial for Old Spice when I was in college.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So how's that
There's
jingle?
no record of it on the internet. I've already looked.
Oh, so how's the jingle go for Old Spice? How's that little song go?
It was before then. This was they had a mock presidential election, and so they picked a bunch of students to do a mock election. I say the funniest thing that I did during that process was I went up to a person. It was during a UT football tailgate, so of course there's people everywhere.
Yeah.
And I went up to a woman who's probably in her 80s and walked up to her and said, "You can be in my special interest group," and gave her a wink.
I'd be worried about if he walked out of the stadium. So can you explain a little bit about your business model and how you run your practice?
Sure. So it's evolved over time. It started off with just trying to do what typically is done in functional medicine, which is test, figure out what's going on, and then come up with a plan. And then I realized that didn't work for a lot of the people that I was targeting, because I don't want to just target those with means. I want to be accessible to everyone. And so I do that by still working in the hospital for financial means, and I have other businesses as well. And so really I do that to allow me to be able to cost effectively provide this type of services for people. And so initially started off as, we'd have an introduction call, I'd order tests, and then we would come up with a plan after that. But a lot of times I found out that, most of the time the plan still revolved around lifestyle medicine. I realized what I'm doing is actually, I'm a lifestyle medicine physician, who uses some principles of functional medicine, but that's where my interests are. And then I had to play to my strengths. And, I think a lot of people in the current medical paradigm try to do everything. And that can lead it to problems. So I said, what do I really want to do? And I really wanted to do lifestyle medicine and health coaching. And I said, okay, how can I do that? And so that's why I created the information. So I said, okay, I have to give people information, create a plan, do the plan. And so that's what I revolved my model around now. And so the wellness courses give people information. because I said, if I go one-on-one with someone, this is going to take 6 sessions. That's going to be costly. But let me just put this into a course that they pay for once. I give them free upgrades on the course. And then after they go through the course, I'm saying now they're armed with the information. Now they can create a plan. I don't give them a plan. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in saying, here, do this and just follow what I say and everything will be okay. That, like I said, the first time they come back to me, I say, what's your plan? After they go through the information, and then I help them create that plan. And then if necessary, I'll order tests and things like that after that.
So it sounds like you are very patient-centric in empowering them to be active members of their participants in their own health. Where we're moving away from the doctor-centric or the treatment-centric, where it's chiropractic or surgery or medicine, to we put the patient as the most valued member of the relationship. What's best for them? And that's something that we like to embrace at Parker Success Academy. So what is your personal definition of success?
So to me, success is waking up every day and doing something to meaningfully contribute to society that brings you joy. That's my definition of success. Notice there's no monetary goal in that. I don't care about making money. I realize I'll make money if I make an impact. So I focus on making an impact and the money will come. And that to me is where the joy is in life, is that what I'm doing now, I'll be honest, I make less money than when I was a conventional medicine doctor, but I have impacted lives all across the world. And that to me matters more.
Amen. Well, we have a strategic plan, and no place for the university, no place is money mentioned, because that's not our goal. We make doctors, we graduate healthcare providers. That's our job, not to make money. Now, I believe that money follows value. If you provide value, the money will come, and and people realize if you really have their best interest at heart, and what you give to them is loving service, they will be attracted to you, and you will have success along with that. You have monetary success along with it. So I see a stack of books over your right shoulder. So if you must be a reader. So what's one book that you would recommend to our audience?
Oh man, there's so many. If I had to distill it down to one, I would say this book changed my mindset. It changed the way I fundamentally approach and evaluate risks and outcomes. And that's Black Swan by Nicholas Nassim Taleb. It's probably the most important book I've ever read, because I literally felt like the top of my head blew off, and this I had like an aha moment when I finished reading that book, and my whole evaluation of what's around me changed after I read that book.
Now, I love that book, and I love his other book, Anti-Fragile. And I've learned a lot from that. And the thing is, and for those who have not read these books, I highly recommend both of those books. Things happen, uncertain events happen. 9/11 was a black swan event. There's economic crashes are a black swan event. This current, we're filming this during the COVID crisis. This was not a black swan event. We knew a big pandemic was coming. They've known it. They've made movies about it. But our reaction to it and the presidential election, things that happened, those are black swans, things that were unpredictable. And it goes back, they call it black swan because back in Europe, 500 years ago, they'd only seen white swans. And something that was exceedingly rare actually goes back to the Roman times rather than 500 years ago, so 2,000 years ago. Nobody had ever seen a black swan until they had discovered Australia. So it was so rare they called it a black swan event. But if you're prepared for, and they're going to come, but you don't know what they're going to be. So if like at Parker University, we had a tornado hit us a year ago, and that was our black swan event. You can't prepare for it. But because we had no debt, and because we had financial liquidity, we were able to overcome that. And actually, we grew during that. So if you're anti-fragile, forgive me for grabbing the podium here, when bad things happen, you don't just survive them, you do better with them. And for our institution, we actually did better since the tornado and COVID than we were doing before, at least as far as growth and a lot of our metrics of success. So very good book. What's the worst moment that you've had in practice or in your journey?
The worst moment it happens to a lot of entrepreneurs, just sitting there and thinking, can I do this? all right, should I give up? Because initially, for the first 2 years, I think I was down about 60 or $70,000 at that point. Right. And, I went into business not knowing anything about business. I didn't hire a business coach, which if you're out there, hire a business coach. It's going to save you a ton of money and save you a lot of the problems. Luckily, I was in a financial position where I could bootstrap because I was a physician. I was still working as a physician part-time. And that was probably the hardest moment and almost giving up. There's several times where I almost gave up, and I kept thinking to myself, no, you're still providing value to people. You're still helping people. Don't give up. Think good things will happen. Just keep plugging, and keep iterating on your business. Try things. If it doesn't work, try something else. And keep moving in the right direction. And 2 years later, I finally hit my stride to where the business is profitable. And now it's expanded into areas I never thought it would expand in. I'm a clinical advisor for companies. I do consulting on the regular, all the speaking, the podcast. There's so many avenues that I've built into my business that are providing value not only to individuals, but to corporations. And that came out of really tough moments and moments where I almost gave up.
Wow. So what was the pivotal moment that changed your trajectory?
It was having one client. He was someone I initially met in the hospital. I spent like an hour in the hospital talking to him. I went back on my day off to visit him in the hospital. It was a young guy, almost lost his leg because of diabetic complications, was saved. And then he bought into the things that we were doing. And I got a text message back from him a couple months later saying, Doc, I'm down 40 something pounds. I'm off my diabetes medications. I'm off my blood pressure medications. And I have the energy to run around with my little girl. And like, I almost burst into tears with that last part. That to me was like, okay, you can do this. You are helping people. Keep going.
That's why you became a doctor. So that's a fantastic story, because really when you touch people's lives, you change their lives and change the trajectory of somebody's health. You've affected that generation and his little girl's life. Just think, she was headed to have her dad leave her at a very young age. So what advice would you give a younger version of yourself as you graduate from college? And you pick which time you graduated from college for this, your master's or one of your doctorate programs.
Yeah, the thing that I would tell my younger self is be more inquisitive. I would pigeonhole into certain things. I would lock on to certain things and say, this is what I want to do, without exploring other options. If I had explored my options younger, I would have taken more business classes, more psychology classes, been interested in mindset training and development younger. And it would have spared me a lot of the hard lessons that I learned because I wasn't open-minded when I was younger. Now that when I talk to students, I always tell them explore every single possibility and every single nook and cranny, because there's more things out there that you can do with your background and your degree than you ever thought. And where you are meant to fit, where you can most add value, may not be where you initially thought it's supposed to be.
Now, you changed your career from being a pharmacist to a physician, and we have a few people who come into our realm, coming to this college for that. We found that pharmacists tend to be the front line for people who are angry with the current healthcare system, because you're the one who gives them the medication and it costs $300 for a month and they get angry with that. Was that your turning point when you decided to change from being a pharmacist to a physician?
It was part of it. So I decided in my first year of pharmacy school that I wanted to go to medical school. But I was 21, I was in Austin, I was having the time of my life, and I'd never quit anything in my life. And I always look forward and have future conversations with myself. And so I was talking to 65-year-old me, and 65-year-old me said, if you don't go to school, you're going to be mad at yourself. If you don't go to medical school, if you quit pharmacy school, you're going to be mad at yourself because you quit. And so I stuck it out. And it was in pharmacy school that I loved the pathophysiology I was learning. I loved the head to toe approach, but it really bothered me that I didn't know how you diagnose things. That bothered me. And I didn't know anatomy, that you don't get much of that in pharmacy school. That bothered me. And I hate knowledge gaps. And so if I feel like I have a knowledge gap, I will do whatever it takes to shore that gap up and learn in that information. And so that was when I decided to go to medical school. And it was the same thing after medical school. I felt like there was a whole side of medicine I didn't learn in medical school, the holistic healing arts. And so I taught myself that. And then I said, okay, I don't know much about business, and I think I want to start a business. So I started a business at the same time I started my MBA. And that was invaluable, dealing with the hardships of my own business and then several other businesses as well, at the same time as getting the book knowledge. So getting the practical and the book knowledge at the same time was invaluable. And so it still continues. Even now, there's still gaps in my knowledge in holistic medicine. There are gaps in my knowledge in business. And I still try every single day to plug those gaps.
Wow, what a journey. Now, one of the things I talk about is that certainty is the enemy of curiosity. That when you're certain about something, you're not curious. And if you're not curious, you're not going to learn. So you can have confidence that you're doing the right thing, but having that certainty we find it to be dangerous, and that you're not inquisitive, you're less likely to do research or to question your own thoughts. Now, marketing and advertising to patients has been a big topic recently. So what tips can you give our audience based upon your practice in regard to advertising and marketing?
Yeah, so where I am at the stage that I'm at, I spent a lot of money initially on advertising and marketing, and I didn't necessarily see a return. And I started looking at where am I getting all of my clients from? And it was my content. It was word of mouth. It was me being not afraid to put value out there. And one of the things I learned and what I've talked about, expert marketers about, they're like, don't be afraid to add value onto your content. You can still get clients if you put information out there. Because a lot of people, when they start off, they're afraid, I can't give anything away for free, right? That it has to come to me. But don't be afraid to put value out there. People will see that and they'll come to you for your opinion, thinking that you can help them, even if you've already given them the information. And I've seen that so many times where I've given people the information and they still come to me for help, creating the plan, fine-tuning the plan, maybe doing testing. So now I really don't do much marketing, honestly. I have the podcast that serves as a vehicle. I do content all the time. I do speaking, but guest speaking, all of that. And so I'm more focused on adding value than I am attracting customers. And once I started thinking like that, everything changed. And that's how I got into consulting as well. So many opportunities opened up inside my business once I started focusing on adding value and not focusing on attracting customers.
I mean, providing content, and so many entrepreneurs I talk to, they recommend don't hold the good stuff back. Give the best away for free. Give your best content out there in your podcast, in your writings. Do you find that to be true?
Absolutely. Everything changed once I started to do that. And I realized that people, even putting the best content out there, people still want the personal touch. Mm-hmm. I could tell them it's the exact same thing in a video, and they still want to see me face to face to hear that same information. It puts them at ease. So no matter what content you put out there, people still want that face to face, that one-on-one interaction to help them through their problems.
Well, the content creates, you're the subject matter expert, and then you give them the personal side of it, maybe tweak it a little bit for them. So I was going to ask you, it sounds like you've got a book inside you, but maybe a book is not what you want to do. Maybe it's the podcast and the blogs and the small snippets that you want to do. Which is it valuable to write books anymore? Or is it better to create content that's consumable in smaller segments?
Yeah, so it really depends on your target audience and you. Don't do anything that you hate to do, because then you're going to get burnt out. Me personally, I don't really like writing. And so when I was coming up with what niche was my own, I love speaking. And I love putting that information out there. I prefer speaking in person. But to me, the podcast and my YouTube and all that stuff is just an extension of that. And so find what works for you, because people consume their media in infinite number of ways, right? And so people can tell if you're not being your authentic self. If you're being your authentic self in your element, people will consume your media. Now, there still is benefit to writing books. The good thing about books is they market themselves. Like they're just sitting on a shelf. Someone could walk by, see a book title, like, oh, that's interesting. right? So it's another way that you can extend your influence without even realizing that you're extending your influence. And so I am working on a book. It's going very slowly because it's not something that I really like to do is write, although I do write. I've actually written 2 curricula, even though I don't really like doing it. But there is value in that. But I think the most value is find whatever you're most comfortable in, wherever you can be the most authentic and project that out into the world.
And I think books allow you to take a concept from start to finish and expound upon it. And where, as opposed to a lot of what young people like now are small snippets. They actually like PowerPoints better than the book, where the book might explain the whole concept if you from start to finish to have a more complex synopsis of what's going on. So what's your book about?
So it's going to be about the first 7 episodes, well, first 12 episodes of my podcast are in a series called The 7 Root Causes of Chronic Disease, which is what I spoke about for Parker. And I'm going to take those and turn them into stories, because stories are powerful. And it's great to give people information, but I think it's powerful to walk people through a scenario where they can identify with the main protagonist, the main character. And that could be them. It could be someone they know. And that identification and recognition is powerful. They'd be like, oh my gosh, this could happen to me. This could happen to anyone. This could happen to my loved ones. What can I do about this? Where can I learn more? And that's going to be what my book is about. It's going to be very little technical information, but more of a story of people overcoming these root causes, what they did to do so, and how anyone can overcome them and better their health.
Wow, I look forward to reading that. So what's something that keeps you up at night? What's something that concerns you, that kind of bothers you, you're worried about?
You know, it's not something to do with my business. It's something to do with the state of where we're in. I did an episode of my podcast called The Forgotten Pandemic, and I get super emotional every time I talk about this. I almost cry because every time I walk in the hospital, I still do, 8 to 10 hospital shifts a month, depending on what's going on. I see 30-year-olds with strokes, 30-year-olds with heart attacks, 30-year-olds on dialysis. And this is not once in a blue moon kind of, this is every single time I walk in the hospital. Now 20% of kids are obese. Those kids don't have a chance. They literally do not have a chance for a healthy, normal life. They're going to be that next 30-year-old on dialysis and who has a heart attack. And that keeps me up. And how do we reach these people? How do we help these people? How do we create sustainable wellness for these people? That's what I think about. And that's what drives me, because I know if I can do something to help these people, to prevent these complications, we can make a real difference in the world. And now I don't have to explain to someone's parents who's 50 that their kid now is on dialysis, or their kid has had 2 heart attacks and needs a stent. That breaks my heart every time I see it.
Wow. Well, it's somebody who's I've had a few more decades than you, and to see the change in health and activity levels, that it's not tracking the right way, and the reliance upon drugs, and the reliance that if I take this pill, it'll overcome this disease, as opposed to eat better food, be more active, move more, eat less. And we'd like to partner with you and provide you a larger audience with this message as you speak at Parker seminars and to our students. Now, we at Parker frequently talk about something called the 10X concept. What's something that you've used in your practice that's had a 10 times return on its investment or your effort?
That has been investing in myself. And once you realize that you are your best asset, there's no limit to what you can do. And once I made that decision 2 years ago to continuously invest in myself, that's where I've seen return. And I do this in a couple different ways. I don't skimp on my health. I don't compromise my health. I don't cut on my health. I make sure I have my wellness routine. I make sure I have my time for reading. I have protected time for just meditation, all of that. And once I crafted my own routine, I was really, truly able to start helping other people, because now my batteries are always full. If my batteries are always full, that means no matter who I meet, when I meet them, where I meet them, I'm in a position to be able to offer them help.
Great advice. And besides, besides yourself being healthy, what value is it to go to an obese doctor who obviously, we've all walked in the office and seen a doc obese. Obviously, they don't care about their health, but they're going to give you advice on how you should live your life. So what's one of your what is your secret power, your superpower rather?
I would have to say that from a young age, I've always been blessed to be able to figure out how stuff works and to always question things and ask why. So it wasn't enough for me just to be like, birds fly. I'd be like, well, why do birds fly? Well, they fly on the wind. Well, why is there wind? And I would just keep asking these questions over and over again until I couldn't ask why or how or what anymore. And then I was satisfied. And I've always just been very observant and listening to people and reading the environment, taking in those cues. And that has served me very well over the years because it allowed me to be able to discern pretty much what was going to be on a test. I worked in medical school. I worked 20 hours a week as a pharmacist in medical school. That's almost unheard of. I got in trouble. The dean of the medical school told me to stop working because they were afraid I was going to burn myself out. But I was like, listen, I've been through this. I know what's going to be there. I know what's important. I've done this before. And that's always been my best talent is just that in curiosity and asking why and trying to chase down information till its end.
So did you drive your parents crazy growing up?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would read every book in the library. They'd be like, we literally have nothing else to give you. Go read the encyclopedia. I already read it. We'll go read it again.
So where do you see healthcare going in the next 5 years?
I'm actually encouraged because one of the things that we've seen with COVID is I've seen more nutraceutical and holistic level research come out in the last year than I've seen in a long time. There's studies on selenium and COVID, glutathione and COVID. There's studies now looking at melatonin. Studies with ketosis, and all of these holistic tools that we use are now being put at the main front. And you've seen it with vitamin D, right? Something that us holistic providers have been screaming from the rooftops for years that this low vitamin D epidemic in America is going to cause an issue. And then look at the data with COVID; it's very clear about vitamin D with COVID. So I'm encouraged that we're going to see a shift into that more head to toe approach that we use in holistic medicine. I was talking to a colleague today. There's now 20 medical schools that have a culinary course in their medical school. That's incredible. Teaching doctors how to cook and the art of cooking and how to cook healthy, nutritious meals. That's so important. And I think you're starting to see that shift because if medication was the answer, no one would need to be on 16 medications. But your average 65-year-old's on 12 to 16 medications. Obviously, that's not the answer. We're heading in the wrong direction. And now you're slowly starting to see people shift into the true nature of holistic medicine.
And I think the COVID crisis shows the people who were on the edge, they were obese, they had low vitamin D levels, and they're very pro-inflammatory diets. They're dying. Or like I've had friends who've had strokes and heart disease from this event. One was in a coma for 6 weeks. He has heart damage. He's had multiple strokes, but he was obese as well. So these things have contributed. I think we're realizing being inflammatory, being obese, being unhealthy is eventually going to. It's not only is it going to cause these lifestyle diseases, but when an infectious disease comes, you're going to be one of the first people to leave. What's one takeaway you'd like to leave our audience with? And what's some good contact information that we could reach you, Dr. Harris?
Yeah, so I always tell people, if you do not make time for health, you will be forced to make time for illness. What would you rather make time for? I'd rather make time for health. And the other thing I tell people is to truly have financial freedom, you must invest in your health. And an investment in your health always pays dividends. Because if you don't invest in your health when you're young, guess what? All that money you save when you get older goes right back into paying for your health. And then you can't do certain things. You can't be productive. And that's a concept that I'm trying to get people to understand as well. Now, how to get a hold of me? You can email me at Dr. Harris at theghwellness.com. My website is theghwellness.com. And check out my podcast, the Strive for Great Health podcast. It's on all major podcast platforms. And because I'm running around all the time, email's the best way to get a hold of me. I do check my email quite frequently, and I do respond to all the emails I get.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for speaking at Parker Seminars. We've been sharing this time with Dr. Richard Harris at Parker Success Academy. Until next time, farewell.
Thanks for watching another episode of Parker Success Academy with Dr. William E. Morgan.